So I'm just missing my little warning. I think you might see a little red dot or something showing it's recording. If you don't see that, and you want to make sure that you can view this later, remind me if you don't see that I'm recording. And if I do show you up on the main screen, you will be recorded too. And if there's anything embarrassing, we can always edit that out. Or it can just make the class more interesting. Okay, attendance. I see we have, what do we have here? Oh, meeting, in meeting. I see these present. See Adam and Dylan and Jonathan, Kofi, and Kyle. And Kofi is connected on his PC here in the classroom. So I'm hoping that there's any issues with your computer, you're always welcome. Just request the code from me. We're not just sending the codes to everyone. Mr. Fleming wanted me to send them on request. Okay, so the attendance is in now. A couple more minutes, and we'll get started. And feel free to send me any questions. I think you can send a discussion, or let's see, if you wanted to send it through meeting, you can just do a little chat, and I should see that on the screen. So if you need to chat, I can't send you a individual, but I think, let's see. Let me know if you want to see live captions. I'm not sure that's going to be useful, might be more annoying, but I can turn on captions and record captions too. All right, well, let's get started. I'm going to bring up the practice for the midterm document. And let me show you on UD Online. Let me go to the UD Online and show you that. Make sure that document link is there so I can go back here to meeting, share that window, and down here underneath these sections, here is any online sessions that will have been recorded, so you'll be able to review these later on. The modified assignment schedule, we pushed things out. They have told us we still want to cover the same things we were planning to cover before the break. So if you click on that, that'll bring up my doc, and you see, oh, that's the old document. I have to update that. Let me quick update that. I'll get the link to my other one here, and I will pop this window out so you can see that. All right, so let me find that doc. That link is to the old one. All right, we'll share, publish that particular sheet, and update that link. Okay. So let me fix that link for you so you don't have bad links here. Oh, wrong page. So then you'll see the correct link right here. Then I'll show you this modified schedule. All right, let's see if it shows up correctly now. Oh, it's still producing the link. I'll just pop that up in. There is the modify schedule, that link will show up. Google is taking time to update. So basically, we're moving the midterm to Wednesday, the practice today, and then we'll get started with advanced Javafx. And basically, you'll see our plan is for delivery is just like as much as online can be like an in-class session, we will try to make that as much like a face-to-face session as possible. We know, well, I know from seeing other students that have wanted to do online that it is hard to keep up. You don't have the face-to-face, I'm going to class. It's easy to slip the assignments. That's why I'm trying to make it as, at the same time we had scheduled face-to-face as we can do it online. So recording the session, I'm going to change that. They decided to go with Microsoft Meet or Microsoft Team instead. Basically the same kind of thing, but I don't want to be the guy doing everything different here, so I complied and I'm going with Microsoft Team. But they will also be recorded and will appear on Microsoft Stream. So I feel a little enslaved to Microsoft, but that's just life. Okay, so that's the new schedule, and that link will eventually show up correctly. This has all stayed the same, and this is the part I want to get to today. Here is the plan to make you succeed, help you succeed on the midterm. Of course, it will take some work from you, and the plan today is to go through these. There's going to be multiple choice from some of the chapter quizzes, but it's more realistic to actually have little problems to solve. So I'm planning to go to a few of the problems at codingbat.com, have you solve some of those problems, and we'll work on some of those today. Then for classes and objects, there will be some multiple choice there of the basic concepts. So review those questions at the end of the chapter. But then I'm going to give you a UML diagram, and I'll look at those here in a minute. And just showing you, basically you'll just have to generate code based on a given UML diagram. Okay. Then a little bit more coding where they covered basic string methods. And I'm going to look at some of those problems, get you some practice at solving problems. I may pick one of those problems or have one almost completed where you just have to complete some code. More UML diagram that uses and demonstrates inheritance. So very similar to what we're looking at in chapter 8. A little bit more advanced UML diagram and code that goes with that. We didn't do a whole lot with exceptions, but the biggest deal is when you want to open text files, which is one of the main things you do when you're doing some basic programming, is you're processing data. That's when you have to surround that with a try-catch. We'll make sure that you have that skill. And that since we just started in JavaFX before the break, it's not going to be heavy-duty JavaFX. It's going to be something like this. Let me pop up the kind of code that you'll need to know. It's going to look something like this. This is the kind of code that will be JavaFX, which is basically knowing what's needed to generate a basic user interface. But we're going to go over this today, and I'll start with the beginning here, back to the earlier concepts. And so let's bring that up here. It's going to be coding bat. So I'll go back to here. Let's go look at that link again. And show that. Okay. And let's see if there's any questions at all. Let me go check, make sure if anyone else has come. It looks like no one else has jumped in yet. And feel free to send a question. If you're having any trouble with a question, I've made you an attendee. Oh, Mazen's here. Good. Welcome, Mazen. I'll get you into the attendance here. You'll get to see what I do on the screen to give you attendance. I'll try not to display anything embarrassing to anybody. And since we're online, nobody gets counted tardy anymore because you're allowed to view this later. So try to encourage. You'll hopefully be more interesting if you're here on time, but you will no longer be counted tardy. Okay, so I'm going to look at that first part here, array 2. Basically, we started giving you some practice with arrays. There will be questions on that. So let's just take a look at just a few questions and some practice code. During the test, you will be allowed to use Eclipse and online resources. So let's take a look at one of these problems. How about, we'll just start with the very first one. Highly recommend you establish an account and you'll be able to see the stars that you completed. But even if you have completed stuff, always go back and review, especially when you're learning coding. It's best to review old problems to just practice the coding. As you have a job coding or you work with programmers, the particular code they're doing will be, you'll start getting used to whatever techniques they use. Okay, so this problem here, return the number of even integers in the given array. Now what I like to do if I'm actually writing the code, copy that, and let's see, it's not so easy to switch windows. I'm going to go to Eclipse and start a new, well, I'm just going to do it here. If I need help, I can go over to Eclipse. Let's just see if we can solve the problem here, because this does sort of do a compile. All right, so we need to count the number of even values in this array. And the name of our array is nums. So our plan is iterate through the array, counting evens. Now, how do we tell if a number is even? Now, I'm going to unmute everyone so you can participate when you want. Let's see. Can I unmute you? It looks like you can unmute yourself and answer the question. So anyone want to give this practice? Let's see if this works here. Anyone give a suggestion of how we would tell if a number is even? Anyone want to give that a try?
Using the mod operator?
Yes, which is, what symbol is that?
Like the percent?
Yes.
Thing?
Yep, percent. So if the number mod 2 is, that's the remainder. Remember, the mod means number divided by another number. Is there a remainder left? That's the mod. So to tell if a number is even, it's num or n mod 2. If the result is 0, then we know it's an even number because it divides evenly. There is no remainder left. So mod 2 is how we tell if a number is even. Okay, well, that's the basic part of that. But to iterate through this array of nums, we'll use the initial thing, the simpler but more typing for int I equals 0. I is less than nums.length. Remember, arrays, there's a length property, no parenthesis needed there. I plus plus. Oh, we need somewhere to keep track of our count. We'll come across that. So if nums bracket I, that's the element in the array at that position, mod 2 is double equal to 0. If it is determined to be 0, then I need to increment some count. Well, I don't have a count yet, so let's call int count equals 0. So if I find I do have something that's even, I do count plus plus. And once I'm done with that loop, counting if anything's even. If it's not even, I don't need an else. I just don't do anything to count. And then I return count. And the wonderful thing about coding bat is when I click go, it will compile it and show me the results. And I got green the first time through. So practicing working with arrays to get at any element of an array, bracket I, basic concept there, and the idea, not related to arrays, but basic coding logic, is telling whether a number is even or odd. Now, if you have a problem with it, if you're stuck, you don't know what do I do, I'm going to say, and during the midterm, although it will take you more time, you could say, how do I find if a number is even? Java even number detect. And you might find someone that gives you help. And let's see if this guy gives us help. Look at that. Of course, often when you go for help like this, no one's explaining where the code is. They just see this. And if you don't really understand what that means, you may end up copying and pasting code that you really don't know. So this gives you a hint. And this is a decent, he didn't put any comments in his code, but it's a simple enough example that would be helpful. So those are the kind of things that you'll be able to do. All right, let's do just a couple more with practicing in arrays. And stop me if you have any questions, not sure about this. This is the kind of thing that will be on the midterm. So let's go back to array 2. And I'm just going to pick one. Let's try something in the middle. I'm not sure they actually get harder as you go down to the right, but let's just pick something in the middle column. How about that guy? Turn the sum of the numbers in the array, except stop counting when you hit a 6, and anything between the 6 and a 7. So that's a little more complex problem. Let's just practice this, and then we'll go on to the next idea. So make sure I understand the problem. Anytime I hit a 6, so let's see here. This, there's no 6s or 7s. Here, I add up those 3. Oh, I've hit a 6. I stop adding up until I find a 7, or I'm at the end of the array. So that makes sense. So we skip 6s and 7s and anything in between them. So that requires a little more complex logic. So here's how I would write something like that. Let's just figure out whenever we hit a 6, we'll just stop adding things up, and then we'll fix our code beyond that. So we need to keep our result. So let's do int result equals 0. And now let's iterate through the array. I'm going to do the other format of iterating through the array for int I. I guess I do need the old form because I need to know where I'm at. I'm going to skip each format. I is less than nums.length plus plus. So this one, the I is just counting through every array. At some point, I need to know, have I hit a 6? So let's put that in a, well, let's just see what that would look like. If nums.i bracket I is equal to a 6, well, that means I need to stop counting until I hit a 7. Well, let's make that a Boolean. How about stop adding equals true? Well, I need to declare that variable Boolean stop adding. Okay, so if I've hit a 6, I don't add. Otherwise, if I haven't stopped adding, there's the not operator, then result plus equals this point in the array, nums I. And once the loop is done, I return result. So the outer loop makes sure that I'm not doing anything beyond outside of the borders of the array, named nums. And if I ever come across a 6, I'm just going to stop adding them up. So I should get the right answer for that one, and I'll get the right answer for that one too, because once I hit a 6, there's nothing left because there's a 7 at the very end. So let's hit go. I should get some green, and let's see what I got here. Oh, I might have got it. Oh, I did get some green. So anytime I hit a 6 and there was nothing more after that, I'm getting the correct answer. But now in their test set, I see that this one, when a 7 came, I should have started adding again, and I didn't. And so I didn't get the right answer. So let's go back to our code and now add that part. If I do hit a 7, stop adding needs to be turned to false. So, well, we must have hit a set. Well, let's see. We'll do that first, then we'll add a little extra. I think we're not going to get it right if we only do this, but let's find out. Now I'm going to do it this way because I actually prefer this in my equalities. If ever I forget the double equal, this will give me a compile error. So if I hit a 7, I'm going to say stop adding equals false. Now some of you can probably guess what the problem is here, but let's see if I get a few more green, and then I'll have to figure out how to fix this. So let's click go. I have less green. What did I do wrong? Oh, I'm adding the 7 by accident. Oh, so I have to come back here and add, let's see here, and skip. I don't want to add that 7. See what happens here? If it's a 7, I turned off adding, and then I'm adding the 7. I'm not supposed to add the 7. So I think what I'll do here is if I hit a 7, then I can, should I do an else here? Or I could increment I to skip this one. Let's do that. Well, if I increment I might push I beyond the boundaries. So let's do an else here. No, that's not gonna work because, well, that's gonna mess us up. Let's just do the increment the I if I hit a 7. I know I'm gonna go beyond the boundary if it's the last I, and so I'll just put that here. If I'm on the last element of my array and I'm on a 7, this can give me an error. So I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do if I is less than nums.length. Then I will add what's here. That should do it. Let's see if we get all green. Oh, I'm getting close. What did I do wrong here? Started adding, came to a 6. Oh, it hit another 6. Oh, they're telling me this is a little more challenging problem. I've hit a 6, but if it's not between another 7, oh, I don't stop adding. Oh, I didn't catch that in there. So it has to be followed by a 7. only in between those two. Well, this one is a little harder problem. I don't want to spend the time thinking about that logic there because I want to go on to other practice. I was expecting this to be easier one because this is just the middle difficulty. This takes a little more coding. I don't want to confuse you with this coding, but you can kind of guess what you would have to do. I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to pick a problem this hard. I'm going to pick something more like those beginning ones that had some basic array things in there. This is more than array logic. There's a little bit more dealing with where I started and is there a 7 at the end. So look at these other array problems. They're basically practicing accessing numbers in the array with some basic logic. Okay, so array 2, practice a few of those. Look for solving the problems. If you don't like this compiler here, although it's a decent compiler, if you want to use Eclipse, you'll be able to work with Eclipse to solve it, to use your code, or to practice the coding. And Eclipse gives you some of those autocompletes. Will give you syntax errors and some help. Here, if you do give a coding error, I mean, just put a coding error in here. Suppose I do a bad for loop on this little problem. I equals 0, I is less than nums.length, I plus plus. You can see the error going here. Result plus equals I, or nums I. There's going to be a couple problems here. Let's see what their compiler gives you. So they're going to give you missing semicolon first. Run it again. Then cannot find symbol I. And that means I haven't declared I as an integer. And can't find the result. So it will give you some errors, but it finds them one at a time and stops on the first error, where Eclipse might catch multiples. Okay, I think that's enough practice for that first one. So for practicing for the array part, review these array 2s, review the questions at the end, basic array understanding. There are array lists as well. And let me go back to then the practice. Let's get to this one. Writing code for a class given a UML diagram. So I'm going to make up a UML diagram here. I'm just going to go ahead and bring one up here, and then we'll write code to go with it. Remember what a UML diagram is? It's a general purpose explaining object-oriented code. And let's find just an example UML, otherwise I'll just make one up real quick. And not that UML. See if they come up, they give a good one here to practice on. Looking for a class diagram. UML covers a ton of other things. Here's a decent class diagram that's UML. So just to let you know, UML is more than just class diagrams like this. UML is all sorts of ways of diagramming processes. And if you do a system analysis course, you cover a bunch of this. But this UML is the kind of thing that you're going to need to understand. If you're going to do coding, you'll need to know how to make code that goes with UML. If you're working with coders, you'll be presenting UML diagrams of various types. This is the more coding related UML diagram. This also is covering what I mentioned there in chapter 10 of the inheritance. This is showing an inheritance as well. Here's aggregation, where a client, no, this is not aggregation. Here's a client, here's an account. The owner is some type of object, and they inherit, the account inherits savings account, checking account. Now, this is actually not allowed in Java. You can only inherit one object from another. So let's look at this first part of this UML. given a diagram like this, let's just look at that very first one, that client. Now it's lacking some information here. You will be in a proper UML diagram for Java, not only given the name of the variable, but the actual type. It'll also be colon type of variable. So let's just guess what that code would look like. And I'm going to bring up a, I don't think it lets me do side by side here, does it? Can't present side by side. So what I'll do, let me put this on the right side of the screen. Let's see if it lets me present the whole screen, left and right. I'll put Eclipse on one side and Java on that UML diagram on the right. And let's go to my meeting and present my desktop. There we go. Okay, so we have this UML diagram. We want to write code for that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that in Eclipse and then let Eclipse catch any problems I might have. So I'm going to do Eclipse, new class. And I'm going to call this UML practice. Okay, so it properly would be the, let me do it correctly. I'm going to do new class client. Shouldn't pay attention to new class client. That's the name of the class. Okay, and name is one of the elements. The plus means it's public. So let's go ahead and be very clear with that. Public. Now we don't know what type it is. Looks to me like a string would be good for the name. So string, and you will be given that. It'll say name colon string name. Now name is a dangerous variable to use because it's such a generic term, but it'll work for this one. The plus, public, SSN, I'm going to make that a string as well. And public address. Address sounds, that will be a string as well. Oh, I forgot to put string. Now that's a pretty simple UML. Now employment. That sounds to me, let's make that something more interesting. Let's see here. Employment, what could that be? Let's just make that a number. Let's make it an int. And I'll call it employment. It has to be called employment because that's what's listed there. And I don't know what it represents, but I'll make it an int just to make it more interesting. Now, something else that will be put here, let's choose something a little more meaningful. They did a very simple one here. Everything's public. Well, if it, basically what I'll put in comments, I'll just put in comments what the code would look like if you saw this. So suppose you saw something like this, minus, we'll call it pay rate. If you saw that in the UML, you would put private double pay. And that's the basics of UML. You read this, minus or plus or minus, private or public. And most of the time in UML, your class variables are usually private and you have getters and setters. So I'm going to just leave that up as an example, a very simplified, and I'll make something more useful over here, and I'll put in comments what you might see. So suppose I saw something like this underneath the methods section. What if I saw something like this? Let's do plus get name. If you saw that in the UML, you would know that it would look something like this in the class. Public, string, get name, and you would be returning. Now, name is my variable that I would be returning. That would be the proper way of writing a class that has proper protection of the variables. It's not a coding error to make these things public. It's just very little more dangerous coding. You're not following the general philosophy of object-oriented that anything changing a variable of client should go through a getter or setter. So a typical setter would look like this in UML. Set name. Now this one would take a variable, and we'll call it notice it does not, you don't always see colon void. That's implied if you don't see anything there. Sometimes it will explicitly put void there. Let's just say you saw that in the UML. That would mean you would write this. The plus, public, no type specified. So I'm going to have it return void and set name. And it takes a variable. And usually you don't even see the name of the variable there. You just see it takes a string as a parameter. So when you're writing the code, it's your choice what actual variable name to put there. Making sure no one sent me a text. My phone was blinking. Okay, so this is much more likely what you'll see in UML, but you get to choose the variable name, but you just need to know it's a string, and I like S for a short variable name. And then you would just say name equals S. So going from UML to actual code. Since we're here at UML, let's skip to the part about inheritance. I'm going to give you a UML that's going to look something like this, where you have one type of UML class pointing to another type. That means this is inherited by this. And let's just do that. We might as well do that with this client. Let's just say a client is a inherits person class. So let's say, well, actually, let's do this one. Let's make an account and have it inherit savings account. So for practice, so we'll end the client. We'll start the account class. I'm not going to do all of this for you at this point because we don't have a lot of time. All right, so new class. And feel free to send any questions at any time here. So account class, I'm going to make the account, and I'll make just a new class. And we'll just do a few of those things there. So I'm going to make the balance private. I don't like public balance. So private double balance. And we'll make that we'll have a getter and setter. So let's just do a quick setter of the balance. Public void set balance. Double B balance equals B. Okay, so there's a basic account that's going to inherit the I just did the bad thing. That's not double balance. That would be type account number. Balance is going to be in the savings account. And that's, yeah, we'll make that a int. I just messed up. I was doing the parent. This is the child. Okay, so that is my child account. Now he's going to inherit the savings account, which will have a balance in it. Okay, so to inherit, well, let's make the savings account. Then we'll add the part of how he inherits. He extends. We're going to put extends here, but rather than write it right now and have red, let's create the savings account, and then we'll have him inherit it. So we'll make the savings account, new class, savings account. This is the guy that has the balance. With the proper coding. And we'll do the setter. And balance equals. Now the savings account is going to have all these other things in here as well. I might as well put that in there private. There'll be a set rate and all that. So a better way to write that would be, I'll just add the matching UML. It'll have minus balance colon double. That would be what it would look like in the UML. And this one here would look like minus rate colon double. So when you see that in the UML, this is the matching code. Here, what would be in the UML would be plus set balance double colon. Well, I'll add the colon void. That's what you would see in the UML. I'm not going to put that, that's confusing. Okay, now the inheritance part. So the only thing different now, other than just reading a UML, understanding the pluses and minuses and the what kind of variable goes in the parentheses, is now adding the inheritance part. And all the inheritance part is the account extends savings account. By doing that, you have now made this inheritance happen. This now has anything that a savings account has. I can do a set balance of my account. Okay, so any questions so far? Looking over array problems, understanding basic class concepts, and the main thing I'm going to emphasize is taking a UML and writing code for it. When you're actually solving specific problems, that's when you'll be digging into more of the code and actually using classes. Let's get a little practice now with processing strings. This is a huge part of programming, handling string, reading characters from strings, parsing, figuring out what is said, splitting it up into meaningful operations. So let's look at some string 2 problems. Give a little practice here. Now, between now and Wednesday, if you come across any problem that you're stuck on, or any concept in the chapter confusing, feel free to send me an email. With this whole online thing, we want to encourage you. Pretend you're coming to my office online. Feel free to send a chat, even talk with one another, trying to make this more meaningful experience. Just because this is new for a lot, and we don't want you to panic and feel like you're isolated. Okay, let's look at an example here. Let's just start with an easy one, and then we'll. Oh, does the help mean that there's help for it? Hey, we can start with these. We're not sure. Let's see. Some of these, there are hints. Look at the hint. Let's read what the problem is. Given a string, return a string. For every char in the original, there are 2 chars. So anytime I come up, I find a string, basically double it when I'm building the result. Just to see what their hint might show us. Although I kind of have an idea how I would do that. I'd be looping through that string. Now, one thing they didn't, and I often will do this on problems, I'll give you a hint at what string method you need to know. I'm thinking I'm going to need to know something called char at, and that length parenthesis gives me the length of a string. Let's see what their hint shows. Their hint shows they recommend declaring a local string. Let's see, let's just enlarge this. they show you can get the length of a string there, so they give you a hint there. And look at that, they do give you a hint at the char at. Or you don't have to use char at, you can use substring to get at a particular character. So having that hint, I'm going to go and write the code. So I have a string str, so I'm going to need to return something. So I have to declare string result. And since it's a string, I initialize it with an empty string. Now in a loop, this time my loop is going through each string or each character in that string str. So I'm going to do for int I equals 0, I is less than str.length. Now if I were doing this in Eclipse, let's just see how that would work just to show you. If you would, you're welcome to actually have Eclipse up during the test. And let's just say we're writing that. Doesn't matter where I write it. Let's just start that right there, put it in Eclipse, and my function. And oh, I haven't ended my for loop yet here, so let's make that a proper for loop. And we'll write it in Eclipse. So if I'm in Eclipse, I can do I is less than str dot, and look at that, it gives me a little help there. You'll be allowed to use Eclipse help if you're stuck. And remember, hitting the dot, starting to spell it out right. If you misspell it, you have to go back to the dot to get your autocomplete to help you again. Str or backspace length. There, once you see that, you can hit enter and you can do I++. And I'm just going to get this prettied up, Control Shift F, gives me a nice formatting. And now inside that loop, I can write this and then come back and solve it. So I don't have to use their interface. I can write it here and then copy paste it over to here. So what would I do? Well, I'm building the result, so I know that result is going to be the next string, the next character in the string at position I. So I can do str.char at, there's the char at, index I. And if I want it to be double, I'll just add another one. Str.char at, index I. I'm pretty sure that's my solution. Eclipse has helped me with some autocompletes. Now I can just take that code, copy and paste it here, and see if CodingBat likes that solution. Oh, I've got completely wrong answers. What did I do wrong? Let me check their hint again. Char at I. Boy, my answers. What did I do wrong? Sure looks like that should be the answer. Just doubling my string. Well, let's try the substring part. Maybe the char at doesn't work how they expected it. Let's just do this, and then we'll see. Maybe the char at is not working the way they think. Okay, well, looks like the substring is working the way they think, and then I'll just add 2 of those. Well, that should give me the right answer. I don't know why the char at didn't. Yeah. Well, that's a weird one. The char at wasn't doing what it was supposed to. I'm thinking that's a bug in their compiler there. But there's a little practice there. Again, some of the basic functions of strings, substring, midstring. Some of the things in strings, you can find out what things are there in Eclipse. I can just stir dot, and I see all the available methods available in strings. Since strings are just used all over the place, you'll need to know. Let's just make a list of the things you'll need to know here. How about I just make that list? I'll just make that list right here. Things about strings you need to know. Now let's just look at them. Stir.charet, what is that supposed to do? It's supposed to give you a string. Okay. Stir dot. The other ones that we did, the compared to is helpful, but the equals is something we actually used in the chapter. So the equals is a good one to know. Stir dot. Go down this list. We did equals. Lots of other things that we did not cover in the chapter, or I don't consider as important. Index of. Where is the character in a particular place in the string? Is empty, that can be useful. Length, that's hugely important. Knowing how long the string is when you're processing it, just like we did there. Stir dot length. Lots of other things. Replace, that can come in here. This was split. This is very useful. If I want to convert my string into an array of pieces, and then I think in the book we did have a starts with and the substring and midstring. Do they have a midstring? They don't have a midstring. It's the substring, very useful. This is one that if I want to get a piece of one or a section of one, once I found where something is, then when I find the index of something, I get a substring. And I think there was one more I saw in there of the substring methods you need to understand. We covered 2 upper, 2 lower. Let's see. Value of. That's interesting. I think those are the main ones. The 2 string, 2 uppercase, 2 lowercase. Trim is helpful. I'll just add the trim. Those are the ones that you need to know. The others, you'll come back to the reference when you need to do something with string that's a little more out of the ordinary. But these are the things. Study those methods of the string and you should be good. I'm not going to demand that you know the rest, but know how these work. And given a problem like that, concatenate or double the string, know what those string methods do. In the chapter, there were multiple choice about some of these. I'll be looking for some of those. Okay, so that's it for processing strings, knowing the basic methods to deal with strings, comparing strings, and parsing them. That means digging through each letter, finding a pattern you're looking for, or splitting them up so you know what to do when someone gives you a URL like this. What website do you go to when you see this? That's what your browser is doing. When you're producing web pages, the coding there is producing strings based on what you've searched for, based on what they've pulled out of the database to display on the page. So processing string is huge all over the coding. Okay, so processing arrays, taking UMLs and producing code, taking text, string, this basically putting a try-catch around a function that's reading a file. And the very last one, going to go back to that one. know this about Javafx, that when you want to produce something on a screen, you need to know these basic pieces. You have a control, a Javafx control object, and there's more than just buttons, but you have a control object. In order for our object to be viewable on the screen, we have to put it in a container, which is our VBox, or our layout container. So I have a control. That goes into a container. The containers have to be put into a scene. Once I have a scene, then the scene can be put onto a stage using the set scene of the stage. So remember these basic steps. Use this as an example. If you want to create a GUI of displaying hello world, create a button or some other object. I might ask to create a label that displays hello world. You put that label inside of a container, making a new one. This is using your object-oriented skills that we have a object. Once we have that container, we create a scene containing that container, initialized with that container. And then we make the stage, which is this part of the standard way to create a Javafx application. We add this to our code, extends application, and then we display the scene, or we finally display the final stage by doing made stage show. All of this can be built using Eclipse. And I realize we are now out of time for the normal class. I am going to stop talking and let you have, if you have any questions, I'll be around for the next few minutes. This will be recorded and it will show up in Microsoft Stream. And you can just go to office.com, I think. Log in with your UD account. And this will show up underneath additional apps, underneath somewhere here. Where are they? Stream, right there. Under Stream, you will see this recording. Okay, send me any questions, any help you need, and I will respond. And even if it's helpful to everyone, I'll send an email to everyone. Have a wonderful day. And I'm going to stick around here for a while, getting ready for Wednesday. If you have any questions, I'll be here. Otherwise, I'll just work. All right, I'm going to hang up so that we'll then produce the recording. I don't think it will record until I stop recording. Actually, I can just stop recording and not hang up.